This key doesn't fit anymore. I stood there in the pouring rain, on the porch of the Beverly Hills estate I designed, and watched a stranger's face peer through the side window. My name is Eleanor Vance. For 62 years, I defined myself by my family. I was a mother, first and foremost. A wife for 40 beautiful years to a man who built an empire from nothing. After he was gone, that empire, every stock, every asset, all $53 million of it, became my son's inheritance. My only job was to be his guardian. His soft place to fall. I thought that made me rich. I was a fool. 3 days ago, my son, Michael, the child I nursed through fevers and cheered at graduations, looked me in the eye and told me I was a relic. That my time in this house, his house now, was over. He said the fortune his father left was his to control. That my sentimental attachment was a liability. His new lawyers, sleek vultures in tailored suits, handed me a prepaid debit card with a limit that wouldn't have covered his monthly car detailing. The security guard, a man who used to wave to me while I tended my roses, took my elbow and guided me to the curb. My own son watched from the doorway, his face a cold, handsome mask, as the California rain soaked through my best coat. He didn't just throw me out. He erased me, but a mother knows her child. She knows every victory, every secret, every lie they ever told to avoid trouble. Michael thought he was dealing with a grieving, weak old woman. He forgot that the same hands that bandaged his scraped knees also helped his father negotiate the contracts that built their fortune. He forgot I have a ledger of my own, filled with secrets he thought were buried forever. From a borrowed room, watching the rain streak down the glass, I didn't cry. I made a plan. I didn't call a lawyer. I called in a favor. A single, quiet phone call to a man who owed his life to my husband. A man who understands that some debts are paid not with money, but with loyalty. By the time the rain stopped, the first domino had already fallen. His accounts, frozen. His reputation, about to shatter. He thought he stole from a helpless mother. He has no idea he declared war on the one person who knows exactly how to break him. So, please share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if the child you loved more than life itself left you with nothing but a reason to fight? This is how a mother's love turns into a mother's revenge. Like, subscribe, and share this story if you believe that no one, not even your own blood, has the right to take your dignity. To understand the depth of Michael's betrayal, you have to understand what we were before. What he was before the money poisoned him. Our life in Newport Beach wasn't just about the wealth, it was a testament to a love story, to a family. Built from the ground up. My husband, Richard Vance, was a titan, but he started as a dreamer with a toolbox. He built Apex Innovations, a semiconductor company, not in a glass skyscraper, but in our 2-car garage. I was there every step of the way, not just as his wife, but as his strategist and his confidant. We were partners. When cancer took him 5 years ago, a part of me went with him. But he left me with 2 beautiful legacies, our stunning, ocean view home filled with memories. And our son, Michael. Michael was 35. To the outside world, he was the brilliant, charismatic heir apparent. He had his father's sharp mind for business and a magnetic charm that could disarm anyone. He lived in a sleek, modern penthouse in downtown LA, drove a limited edition Aston Martin, and his hobby was collecting vintage watches, a passion his father funded. But I saw the cracks others missed. The impatience. The entitlement that grew like a weed after Richard's death. He saw Apex not as his father's life's work but as his rightful piggy bank, and he viewed my presence as the only lock on the lid. He was surrounded by a new circle, too. People like Cassandra Reed, his 28-year-old fiancée. A stunning, razor-sharp corporate lawyer from an old money family. She was glamorous and ambitious, and her eyes always held the cold calculation of a spreadsheet. I believe she saw Michael not as a man, but as a merger. And then there was his best friend and CFO, Julian Croft. Julian was the quiet, numbers-obsessed yes-man, always in Michael's shadow, always ready with a plan to maximize profit, ethics be damned. Together, they formed an echo chamber of greed, constantly whispering that I was a sentimental old woman, an obstacle to their grand, cutthroat vision for the company. For years, I ignored the warnings. I made excuses. He's grieving, I'd tell myself. He's young, he's ambitious. I clung to the memory of the little boy who would bring me dandelion bouquets. I filled my days maintaining the home Richard built for us, tending to the rose garden he loved, and overseeing the Vance Family Foundation, our charity that funded STEM programs for underprivileged kids. That was my world. My peace, but the peace was an illusion. The first hint of the coming storm was subtle. Michael began questioning my management of the foundation's funds, suggesting it was fiscally irresponsible. He'd make offhand comments about the crushing property taxes on the house and how it was a drain on the estate. He and Cassandra would exchange glances at family dinners, a silent language of conspiracy I wasn't meant to understand. He was slowly, methodically, building a case. Framing my stewardship as incompetence. Framing my love for my home as extravagance. He was setting the stage, and I, the devoted mother, was a willing actor in my own downfall, blinded by a love he had already stopped feeling. Can you see the signs looking back at you? Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you missed the truth right in front of you? Let me know in the comments. The legal papers he had me sign a month after Richard's death, the ones he said were just probate formalities, that I signed through a veil of tears, those were the keys to the kingdom. And I handed them to him myself. He didn't just rob me. He made me an accomplice to my own destruction. But he made one fatal mistake. In his rush to seize his father's fortune, he underestimated his mother's memory. And her rage. Subscribe to the channel, because the trap he set for me was nothing compared to the one I was about to lay for him. The real story is just beginning. The first week was spent in humiliating logistics. Michael's prepaid debit card declined at the grocery store, forcing me to return basic necessities under the manager's pitying gaze. My phone died after he canceled the family plan without warning. Isolated and cut off, I stayed in a musty room at the Sea Breeze Motel, where the neon sign flickered like a failing heartbeat, despair as a fuel, and I had gallons. My first move was quiet, calculated, using the motel's relic landline to call not a lawyer, but an old friend, Ben Shepherd. Ben, Apex's original engineer and my husband's first hire, had left years ago, disgusted by Michael's cold, profit-obsessed direction. Ben's voice was a lifeline. Eleanor? My God, are you alright? Michael told everyone you'd chosen to take an extended silent retreat abroad after a mental break. A mental break. The cruelty stole my breath. Michael wasn't just stealing my money, he was erasing my credibility, my sanity. I told Ben everything. The silence on his end was heavy, then resolved. He's liquidating the foundation's assets, Ben said grimly. Telling the board it's to fund a new, aggressive growth strategy. Julian is rubber stamping everything. Julian. The loyal CFO. I knew his weakness. Ambition. He'd always coveted Ben's old title, Chief Operating Officer, but Richard never trusted him with the operational soul of the company. I gave Ben his first task. Can you get me copies of the financial transfers? Specifically, anything related to the Vance Family Foundation Trust? He said he'd try. But accessing those sealed files was a dangerous game. If Michael found out, the next day, a courier arrived at the motel, a plain envelope from Ben. Inside were spreadsheets. My heart hammered against my ribs as I read them. Michael hadn't just taken my $53 million inheritance. He and Julian had funneled another $20 million from the charity's endowment into a shell company. A company named Midas Holdings. The paperwork listed its director, Cassandra Reed, his fiancée. It was all a scheme. They weren't just greedy. They were thieves, and they were using my family's name, my husband's legacy, to fund their lavish future together. The injustice was a physical pain. Those funds were for children's scholarships and for science labs in struggling schools. He was stealing from the poor to buy himself another sports car. I had the proof. But proof is meaningless without a platform. And I was a discredited, supposedly unstable woman in a motel room. I needed a bigger weapon. I remembered something Richard told me decades ago, a failsafe he'd built into the company's servers, a backdoor access protocol only he and Ben knew about. A way to monitor everything, a digital ghost in the machine. He called it the Sentinel. I called Ben again. Richard's Sentinel. Does it still exist? Ben gasped. Eleanor, that's a nuclear option. If we activate it and Michael's security team detects the intrusion, I'm already homeless, Ben. I whispered, my voice steely. What more can he take? We did it that night. From a dusty laptop Ben brought me, we accessed the Sentinel. And the world of Michael, Cassandra, and Julian unfolded before us in real time. It was a tapestry of betrayal. We saw emails between Julian and Cassandra planning their exit strategy after the transition of power. We saw internal memos, where Michael slandered my mental state to the board. And then, we found the motherlode, encrypted files labeled Project Phoenix. It was their plan to strip Apex Innovations of its assets, sell the patents to a foreign conglomerate, and dissolve the company, leaving hundreds loyal to Richard jobless, all while they walked away with hundreds of millions. They weren't just betraying me. They were betraying everyone, but the Sentinel was a two-way street. The moment we accessed the most secure files, a digital tripwire was triggered. We didn't know it yet, but in a high-rise in LA, Julian Croft's computer flashed a silent crimson alert. He knew someone was inside. And he was already tracing the signal back to the Sea Breeze Motel. The stakes were no longer about money or a house. It was about stopping 3 vipers from destroying 1,000 lives and desecrating my husband's memory. I had to move faster than they could. I had to weaponize their own greed against them, but as I looked at the address of the shell company, on the spreadsheet, a dangerous, perfect idea began to form. A way to make them destroy themselves. All I needed was a single phone call to the one person they thought was in their pocket. The question was, would he answer before Michael's people found me? The crimson alert on Julian's screen wasn't just a warning, it was a countdown. We had maybe an hour, or less, before security descended on the Seabreeze Motel. Panic was a luxury I couldn't afford. The spreadsheets were in my hand, the evidence of their theft burning a hole in my soul. But evidence in a courtroom would take years. I needed justice now. Richard's justice, and then I saw it. The key to it all. The shell company, Midas Holdings, had a registered address. It wasn't a P.O. box. It was a luxury penthouse in downtown San Francisco. Cassandra's penthouse. They were so arrogant, so sure of their own invincibility, they'd used her own home as the legal facade for their theft. A dangerous, perfect plan clicked into place. It was ruthless. It was silent. And it would use their own greed as the weapon. Ben, I said, my voice unnervingly calm. I need you to do two things, and there's no time to explain. First, use the Sentinel. Send a full, encrypted data dump of Project Phoenix, the shell company transfers, and everything to every single member of the Apex Board of Directors. Time the email to send in exactly 30 minutes. Eleanor, that will set off a nuclear bomb. Ben stammered, that's the point, I said, my eyes fixed on Cassandra's address. Second, I need the private, unlisted cell phone number for Arthur Brompton. The line went silent. Arthur Brompton was the notoriously ruthless CEO of the Titan Group, the very foreign conglomerate Michael was secretly negotiating with to sell Apex. He was a shark. And he was the only man on earth who hated being lied to more than he loved a good deal. I was about to pit two sharks against each other, and my son was the bait. Ben read me the number, his voice trembling. My fingers, old and shaking just hours before, now dialed with the steady precision of a sniper. The phone rang once. Twice. A gruff, impatient voice answered. Brompton. I didn't say my name. I gave him facts. Cold, hard, undeniable facts. Mr. Brompton. You are currently in negotiations to acquire Apex Innovations for $4.2 billion. You're being defrauded. The CEO, Michael Vance, and his CFO are siphoning company assets through a shell company called Midas Holdings, registered to his fiancée's penthouse in San Francisco. They're selling you a corpse they've already picked clean. Check your secure inbox. The proof is there. I hung up. I didn't wait for a response. I had set the trap. Now, I had to be a ghost. Ben and I erased our digital footprints, powered down the laptop, and fled the motel just as two black SUVs screeched into the parking lot. We were shadows, vanishing into the city. The next 72 hours were a silent storm. From a safe house, we watched the fallout on the news feeds Ben could still access. It was a thing of brutal, beautiful efficiency. Arthur Brompton, a man who moved with the subtlety of a sledgehammer, didn't call lawyers. He called his own private security and the Securities and Exchange Commission. He publicly terminated the acquisition deal, citing egregious acts of corporate fraud and bad faith. The timed email from the Sentinel hit the Apex Board's inboxes like a bomb. Panic erupted. The stock price, Michael's holy grail, began a catastrophic freefall, losing 60% of its value in a single day of trading. But the masterpiece, the moment of true poetic justice, happened at Cassandra's penthouse. News choppers captured the footage, federal agents, wearing windbreakers emblazoned with FBI and SEC, marching a handcuffed Julian Croft out of the building. His face was a mask of sheer terror. Minutes later, a stunned and furious Cassandra Reed was escorted out in a separate car, her designer clothes looking more like a costume than ever. They were charged with wire fraud, embezzlement, and securities violations. Their perfect, greedy world ended in the blink of a flashing camera. And Michael? He wasn't arrested that day. He was left to watch it all crumble. The board voted unanimously to remove him as CEO, citing the ongoing federal investigation. His assets were frozen. His reputation was atomized. He was utterly, completely alone. He stood on the precipice of everything he'd ever wanted, and he watched it all burn to ash because of one phone call from the mother he'd thrown away. He thought he'd taken everything from me. But he was wrong. All he'd taken was my mercy. The dust, as they say, eventually settles. But it settles differently for everyone. For Julian and Cassandra, it settled into the cold, sterile reality of a federal prison. Their trials were swift. The evidence was irrefutable. They were sentenced to 15 and 12 years, respectively, their lavish futures replaced by orange jumpsuits and iron bars. The justice system, slow as it may be, had finally caught up, fueled by the truth we unleashed. For Michael, the punishment was more complex. He avoided prison, narrowly, by cutting a deal with the prosecutors, turning over every piece of evidence he had on his co-conspirators in exchange for immunity. He was left a free man, but was he freer than he'd ever been? No. He was free. In the way a ghost is free. He was bankrupt, professionally blacklisted, and utterly alone. The last I heard, he was living in a small apartment in a city he'd never have glanced at before, working a job he'd have once considered beneath him. His punishment wasn't a cell, but a lifetime of quiet mediocrity, a constant, grinding reminder of the empire he'd betrayed and lost. And for me, Eleanor Vance? The courts restored everything to me. The fortune, the company, the house. I stood once more on the porch of my home, the new locks clicking open with a key that finally fit. But the victory wasn't in the returned wealth. It was in the silence. The peace. The roses in the garden were still beautiful. The ocean view was still breathtaking. But I saw it all through different eyes. The eyes of a woman who had lost everything and chosen what to reclaim. I sold my shares in Apex back to the company, using the funds to permanently endow the Vance Family Foundation, ensuring no one could ever raid it again. I appointed Ben Shepherd as the chairman of the board. The company needed a leader with a moral compass, not just a profit motive. And this house? It's too full of echoes for one person. I've decided to donate it, to turn it into a retreat for families who have lost loved ones to illness, a place for them to find peace, just as Richard would have wanted. This story is not a celebration of revenge. It is a warning about the poison of greed and a testament to the resilience of a mother's heart. Revenge is not about inflicting pain, it is about restoring balance. It is about ensuring that a wrong is recognized and that the scales of justice, however slowly, are made even. My revenge was not in destroying my son, but in stopping him from destroying everything his father stood for. It was in protecting the innocent people, the employees, the students depending on those scholarships, from his unchecked avarice. The ancient Greek tragedians understood this. They called it nemesis, the inescapable agent of justice that comes for those who succumb to hubris, to arrogant pride. Michael's hubris was believing that blood gave him the right to steal, that family was a chain to be broken for personal gain. My justice was the natural consequence of that arrogance. So, what is the moral of this story? Is it that money corrupts? Perhaps. But I think it's something deeper, something fundamentally American. It's about the principle that no one, not even your own flesh and blood, has the right to strip you of your dignity, your legacy, or your voice. It's about the quiet, fierce strength that lies dormant in all of us, waiting for the moment we are tested. It's about the fact that sometimes, the most powerful force in the world is not a fist or a fortune, but a truth, spoken clearly and without fear. I loved my son. I will always love the boy he was. But I could not save the man he became. I could only stop him. And in doing so, I had to save myself. So I leave you with this question to ponder in the comments: was my action justice? Or was it revenge? And where do you draw the line between protecting your life's work and destroying your own family? Thank you for listening. If this story resonated with you, if you believe in standing up for what's right even when it's hard, then share this video. Like, subscribe, and let me know your thoughts below. Remember, the greatest legacy we leave isn't in our bank accounts. It's in our actions.